What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video and welcome to my Platinum Trophy review series. In this series, I complete a game to its fullest and I share my opinion of the game with you. I talk about the pros of the game, the cons of the game and my general thoughts of playing this game. I also then take a look at the trophy list and I tell you how I found earning all of the trophies and earning that shiny Platinum Trophy. So today we're going to be talking about Crash 3 Warped and we're going to deep dive into only that game, which is a 3-part of the Crash N'Sane Trilogy. So before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe, all that good stuff, and let's begin with the video. So what is Crash Warped? If you haven't heard of it before, Crash 3 Warped is the third installment in one of the most famous PlayStation franchises of all time. Crash Bandicoot came out in the early 2000s and has been remastered and revitalised by Vicarious Visions in 2017. Okay guys, this game has got some pros and some cons. I'm not sure if the pros outweigh the cons in my opinion, because I think the cons actually aren't that significant. It's just realistically a lack of content in the game in my opinion. So to start with, the game, the platforming, the actual gaming platforming is incredibly well done. It's one of the best platformers I've ever played in terms of gameplay alone. You get placed in 25 main levels, 5 bosses and 5 unlockable levels, and of these 30 levels, about 20 of them are just basic platforming levels, and that is where the game really shines, when you just play as Crash or Coco and you make your way through some treacherous levels, vaulting, jumping, spinning your way through to finish the level. There is then 10 levels which involve Crash underwater, Crash driving car racing, involving Coco on Little Tiger, and all these sort of things, and these levels in my opinion really take away from the game. I think they aren't very fun and they aren't that enjoyable, and because of that I spent a fifth to maybe a quarter of my time thinking that this game, I want to get back to the main chunk of the game. Now as well on that, there's 30 levels plus 5 boss levels. That sounds pretty long. They're really not. Each level can be finished in probably 3 to 5 minutes maximum. Well, considering the speedruns for most levels are under 2 minutes, most people, even if you take your time, you're not going to be spending more than 5 minutes on each level, because another thing is, they really aren't that difficult. If you're just playing through them and taking your time, it really is the easiest Crash Bandicoot of the 3. But there's no competition there. I think we pretty much all know it is the easiest, and that's why it's the only game of the 3 I've actually platinumed. Now on top of just the generic platforming levels, I think they're really improved by the amount and versatility of the moves and the abilities that Crash has. You have your slide jump, you have your spinning, you have your bazooka. I think all the abilities that Crash have really make the game a lot more enjoyable throughout, which I think the first 2 don't have. But that being said, it does make the game a lot easier, so you have to take it with what you want. If you want a really hard platformer, Crash 3 Warped just isn't that. It's more of an enjoyable, casual platforming game, which is done pretty well. I don't have a great deal to actually say about Crash Bandicoot. It's a pretty good platforming game, but it's sadly pretty short and some of the levels aren't that good. The game looks really good, it's been really sharpened. It came out in 2017 and it still holds up amazingly today. The sounds are good, the visuals are decent, the voiceovers are done well. A lot of them stuff's just taken straight from the games, from the original games, but they were done well back then anyway. Crash is a protagonist that doesn't say much, he's a silent character, just like most characters were back in 2000, so it's hard to critique those sort of things. I did enjoy my time with this game. It probably took me 20 hours to finish the entire game. I did enjoy it, but I have some issues with this game, which I think people don't want to hear. I think Crash is held as one of the best mascots for PlayStation. He's definitely probably one of the most well-known gaming mascot of all time. He's almost as well known as Mario. I think in this modern day he's so well known, and I think because of this, Crash fogs the general gamer's mind with nostalgia and those dreaded member berries.
Remember Ghostbusters? Oh, I remember.
Member berries, which make people think games are better than what they are, because in my opinion this game's pretty overrated.
What did you just say?
This game's pretty overrated.
Say it again to my face.
This game's pretty overrated.
Come again?
Now, I don't think it's a bad game, it's just not a great game. I've seen people saying it's game of the generation and all that stuff, and I just think to have a basic platforming game as your game of the generation, I don't really agree with that. I don't think it does anything new. If anything, it just does things that were kind of innovative 20 years ago, which aren't now. There's a reason why we don't have that many platforming games at the moment, because gaming has moved on. Gaming can do more and be more than platforming, and you know what? My prime example of this is looking at Crash Bandicoot 4. So Crash N'Sane Trilogy sold really well, but again I'm blaming those dreaded, lovely, tasty member berries and their super secret special powers. Because when we look at Crash 4, we can actually look at Crash 4 in fact didn't sell very well. It sold units, it's a AAA game, but sold nothing in comparison to the N'Sane Trilogy, and that's because once the member berries, the nostalgia wears off, people just aren't that interested in it. I probably got lots of people in the comments who are going to hate me for it. Do you know, it's my opinion, don't hate me for it, it's just, it is what it is. I think it's good enough. The games are okay, the games are pretty good, they're just not amazing, and they're pretty empty, they're really short, and doesn't compare to the Spyro Reignited Trilogy, because Spyro, the games are better in my opinion. We've got a better cast, we've got a better story, we've got funner levels. It's just opinion, but I think Spyro holds up, and I think it's unfair that Spyro's not getting a new game, and it just sort of shows again that the nostalgia is so much stronger with Crash Bandicoot as of Spyro, and it's unfair because Spyro deserves, in my opinion, it's a better game, he's a better character, it's a better game, it's a better franchise, he deserves a Spyro 4, not Crash. Okay, so now on top of the trophy experience. Now, Crash Bandicoot's renowned for being really difficult. Now, Crash 1 being the hardest, and I'm pretty much sure it gets easier as the series goes on, Crash 3 being the easiest. Now, Crash 3 wasn't easy, but it definitely wasn't hard, so if you know me, I say I'm not a great platformer. It takes me a long time to grasp these sort of things. I just find them really frustrating and I haven't got the ability for it, usually. I did for Crash 3, and I found that actually on a whole it was totally doable. Of the 30 levels, I would say 20 of them I was doing first and second time. That's right guys, someone who's not good at platform, I was finishing most of the levels and getting gold relic, not platinum, but getting the gold relic, which is what you need for the trophies, first time. So on that, yes, I think this is what happens is there's about 5 levels which are really hard, and 5 levels take about 50 to 100 attempts, but by the time you've done those, you've developed your ability and you're good enough to basically walk through the rest of the levels. So how do you go about actually earning the Platinum Trophy? Well, there's a couple stages I've wrote down. Firstly, you just play the game, have a bit of fun, get the story mission trophies, all those things. That's stage 1. That'll take you about 6 to 7 hours. And then you then go on the next stage, and basically you have to unlock the time trial relic for every level, which is 30. 1 I believe, including the DLC, and then you have to break all the boxes to get all of the gems. Now the gems are a little bit confusing, so you can't really do the gems first, because you pretty much, what happens is there's certain levels which are locked behind time trials, so you kind of have to do the relics first or do some of the gems and then go back. I did the gems up until a point that I went and did the time trials, and I came back and did all of the rest of the gems. Now what's really confusing about the gems is the fact that you have colour gems, which basically you have to find a certain colour gem, which unlocks hidden paths in earlier levels. So for example, there might be a gem on level 18 which unlocks the hidden paths for level 6 and 9, so you cannot get all the gems until you find that gem. Is that a little bit confusing? If that sounds confusing, that's because it is very confusing. The game doesn't tell you this at all, and I find it really difficult, and I found it personally like I needed to use a guide, because otherwise you're going to be working your way through levels, wondering why you've missed, why you don't have all the boxes for a certain level, why you can't find a certain gem, and that's because they're locked behind these colour gems, and as well the colour gems are barely coloured, so you'll have like a white gem when the rest of them are all grey, and it's like apparently that's a colour gem. It can be quite frustrating, and to be honest, because of that you do actually need a guide just to figure out where you're going for some of the levels, which I didn't really enjoy having to do. Now it's worth saying there's guides all over the internet for time trials. Now like I've said, I didn't find it too difficult, the time trials. I think it took me about 15 hours to do this stage, to do all the gems and do all of the relics. Totally doable. So in terms of difficulty, I'd probably only give this game a 5 out of 10 difficulty. It's definitely not a 4, it's definitely not easy, it's just, it takes a bit of skill and a bit of practice and a bit of determination, but I would probably say most gamers out there have the ability to finish this game. It's just whether or not you want to do it. And that's pretty much it for this one guys. I just want to do a quick short review for this one. There's not a great deal to say. If you like Crash and you like platformer games, you're going to like this game. And if you're like me and you're not a big fan of platformers, this is one of the best platformer games out there. It's pretty short, it's a fun platformer game with a fun platinum trophy. I did enjoy my time with it, I just think it's a little bit short, and I just think on whole Crash is pretty overrated, because I think the platforming genre is just, it doesn't really have that much of a place in the modern day of gaming, because games can be so much better now. Finally, if I was to give this game probably a score of 10, I'd probably give it a firm 7 out of 10. The game isn't bad, it's just a bit short, and I think the problem is that the reputation of these games exceed what they actually are. I just don't think they're as good as what everybody says. 7 out of 10, an average game in my opinion. Nothing great, nothing terrible. Yeah. Probably worth a play, definitely probably worth a platinum if you want to get some platform and you want to play a bit of Crash, definitely achievable for most players. I would say play Crash 3 first. I know it seems counterintuitive to play the third of the 3 series first instead of playing it last, but honestly it will really help you develop your abilities and get ready for Crash 1 and 2 if you want to go that way. And if you didn't enjoy Crash 3, then you haven't committed to a really hard platforming game. That's all for this one, guys. Thanks so much for watching. What's your opinion on Crash Bandicoot? Do you think it's full of nostalgia and not as good as what it actually is, or do you just love Crash more than anything, or do you just not like it? I'd love to know. Thanks for watching. Take it easy.